Have you ever poured your entire soul into a single moment? A moment that was supposed to define a new chapter of your life, a celebration so uniquely you that it could never be replicated? I did. I planned one. And my own sister, the one person I thought would be cheering the loudest from the front row, tried to burn it all to the ground. She tried to steal my moment, my identity, my joy, all for a fleeting glimpse of the spotlight. She thought she knew me. She thought she could predict my every move. But she had no idea that when you push someone who has been planning their masterpiece for months, they don't just break. They build something better, something she would never see coming. My name is Santiago Smith, and I'm 32 years old. This all started about 6 months ago. My partner and I were planning our commitment ceremony. Now when I say ceremony, I need you to erase any image you have of a stuffy church or a generic ballroom. This was never going to be that. We're both creative people deeply involved in the local art and design scene. We wanted our celebration to be a reflection of that of us. We called it a themed commitment ceremony and costume gala. The theme was metamorphosis, a celebration of growth, change, and becoming who you're meant to be. The dress code wasn't just formal, it was expressive. We encouraged our guests to come as their most authentic, fantastical selves. Elaborate, non-gender conforming attire wasn't just accepted, it was the entire point. It was a space for everyone to shed their skin and shine. And for me, the centerpiece of my own metamorphosis was the outfit I would wear. From the very beginning, I knew I wasn't going to be in a standard tuxedo. That's not me. It never has been. I've always seen clothing as a form of art, a way to tell a story without saying a word. And the story of this day was one of triumph, of finally arriving at a place of love and self-acceptance. I needed an outfit that screamed that from the rooftops, so I decided to design it myself. For months I sketched. I filled notebooks with ideas, fabric swatches, and silhouettes. I drew inspiration from everything: the architecture of butterfly wings, the way light refracts through a prism, the structure of ancient armor. Slowly, painstakingly, a design began to take shape. It wasn't just a piece of clothing. It was my heart translated into silk and thread. It was a gown, an elaborate, floor-length white ensemble. But it was so much more than that. The bodice was structured almost architectural, with sharp, clean lines that were meant to represent strength and resilience. But flowing from that structured top was a skirt made of countless layers of the softest, most ethereal organza. Each layer was cut asymmetrically, so when I moved, it would look like mist or a cloud shifting in the wind. It was a contrast of hardness and softness, of protection and vulnerability. The real magic, though, was in the details. I designed a delicate hand-beaded pattern that snaked up one side of the bodice and cascaded down the skirt. The beads were tiny, iridescent pearls and crystals that would catch the light. The pattern wasn't random. It was a stylized map of the constellations that were in the sky on the night my partner and I first met. It was a secret story woven directly into the fabric, a tribute to our beginning as we celebrated our future. This garment was everything. It was my past, my present, my hopes. It was the physical manifestation of my journey, and I was so proud of it. Now in my life, there has always been one person who I shared everything with first, my sister Leah. She's 29, 3 years younger than me, and for most of our lives, she was my person. My confidant, the keeper of my secrets. When we were kids, we were inseparable. We built forts, created imaginary worlds, and promised to always have each other's backs. As we got older, that bond shifted as it does, but I always believed the foundation was still there. I saw her as my biggest supporter, the one who understood my creative side because she'd seen it blossom since we were children. She was the one I'd call with a wild new idea, and she'd be the one to help me brainstorm. I thought she was my ally. I believed with every fiber of my being that my happiness was her happiness. So naturally, as soon as I finalized the design for my gown, the sketches, the fabric choices, the notes for the seamstress, Leah was the first person I wanted to show. This was 6 months before the ceremony. I invited her over to my apartment. I remember the feeling so clearly. My hands were practically buzzing with excitement. I had the large sketch pad laid out on my coffee table, covered with a silk cloth for a bit of dramatic flair. "Okay, are you ready?" I asked, my voice giddy. Leah was sitting on the couch, sipping a glass of wine. She smiled a wide, familiar smile. "Lay it on me, big brother. I've been dying to see what you've been hiding in that studio of yours." I took a deep breath and pulled the cloth away. For a moment there was just silence as she leaned forward, her eyes scanning every line on the page. I started explaining it, all my words tumbling out in a rush of passion. I pointed out the structured bodice explained the symbolism of the flowing skirt. I traced the path of the constellations with my finger, telling her the story behind them. I showed her the fabric samples, letting her feel the weightless organza and see the shimmer of the sample beads. I poured my entire soul out onto that coffee table. I explained why it had to be this design, how it represented every struggle and every victory that had led me to this moment of profound happiness. When I finally finished, I looked up at her, my heart pounding in my chest, waiting for her reaction. Her eyes were wide. "Santi," she breathed, picking up the main sketch. "This is breathtaking. It's not just a design, it's a piece of art. It's you." Relief and joy washed over me in a tidal wave. That was it. That was exactly what I wanted to hear. She got it. She truly, completely got it. We spent the next hour talking about it. She asked incredibly detailed questions. Where was I getting it made? What was the designer's name? Could she see the list of materials I'd sourced? I didn't think anything of it. I just saw it as genuine, supportive interest. I thought she was just as excited as I was trying to picture the final product. I gave her the name of the boutique designer I was commissioning. I showed her my detailed spec sheet. I held nothing back. Why would I? This was Leah. My sister. My first friend, my most trusted confidant. She hugged me tightly before she left that night. "I am so incredibly proud of you," she said, her voice warm in my ear. "You are going to be the absolute center of the universe on your big day. No one will be able to take their eyes off you." I went to bed that night feeling like I was floating. The most important person in my world had validated the most important creative project of my life. My vision was clear, my support system was solid, and the path to my perfect day seemed bright and completely unobstructed. I had my partner, I had my perfect design, and I had my sister cheering me on. I felt invincible. I had absolutely no idea that the person who had just hugged me, the one who had promised I would be the center of the universe, had just walked out of my apartment with a blueprint on how to steal that universe right out from under me. I was 6 months away from the happiest day of my life, completely unaware that I had just handed my sister the very weapon she would use to try and destroy it. That feeling of invincibility carried me for a solid month. It was a golden time filled with the best parts of planning a major life event. There were cake tastings, venue walkthroughs, and endless happy phone calls with my partner. Everything was falling into place. And through it all, Leah was my shadow, my cheerleader. She'd text me almost daily. "Thinking about the dress. Have you seen any progress pics? Or just had a thought. What kind of shoes are you pairing with it? We need to make sure the vibe is perfect." Every message felt like a little burst of warmth, a confirmation that I wasn't doing this alone. She was invested. She cared. I'd send her photos of fabric swatches under different lighting, and she'd reply instantly with detailed opinions. I'd tell her about a conversation with the designer, and she'd ask follow-up questions that were so specific, so thoughtful that I felt like she was memorizing every detail right alongside me. She was helping me build the monument to my happiness, one supportive text at a time. It never once occurred to me that she wasn't helping me build it. She was studying its architecture so she could replicate it for herself. The moment the world tilted on its axis came 5 months before the ceremony. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The designer I'd commissioned for the white gown had called me a few days prior. She'd found a slightly different kind of seed bead that she thought might catch the light better than our original choice. It was a tiny, almost insignificant detail, but I'm a perfectionist and I wanted to see it in person before signing off. So I scheduled a quick drop-in at her boutique. I remember whistling as I walked from my car. The sun was out. It felt like a perfect ordinary day. I pushed open the heavy glass door to her studio, the little bell above it chiming softly. The designer was with another client in the main showroom, so she waved me toward her back workshop, calling out, "Santiago, so good to see you. I'm just finishing up." The bead samples are on my main cutting table. Feel free to take a look. Her workshop was a creative paradise. Bolts of silk and lace were stacked to the ceiling. Sketches were pinned to every available surface, and 3 or 4 dress forms stood like silent sentinels, draped in various stages of creation. I navigated my way through the beautiful chaos to her massive oak cutting table in the center of the room. And that's when I saw it. It wasn't my gown, not yet. Mine was still just a collection of fabrics and a pattern. This was a calico mock-up, a rough draft of a dress made from inexpensive fabric to perfect the fit and form before cutting into the real material. It was draped on a mannequin that was distinctly not my size. It was shorter with a different set of proportions, but the design was mine. My breath hitched in my throat. I took a step closer. It was undeniable. There was the same structured bodice. There was the unmistakable sweep of the skirt, pinned to mimic the exact flow I had designed. And pinned to the bodice was a sheet of paper, my spec sheet, or rather a photocopy of it. I could see my own handwriting in the margins notes I had made copied and transferred. And underneath my notes in a different, more fluid script were a few annotations. Slightly smaller waist, reduced shoulder width by 1 inch. For a full 10 seconds, my brain simply refused to process what my eyes were seeing. I thought it was a mistake. Maybe the designer was just using my design as a jumping-off point for another client. But that didn't make sense. She was a boutique artist known for her one-of-a-kind creations. She would never plagiarize her own commission. Confusion was churning in my stomach like a cement mixer. I picked up one of the bead samples, pretending to examine it, my mind racing, trying to find a logical explanation. There had to be one. Just then, the designer came bustling into the workshop, her tape measure still draped around her neck. "So what do you think?" she asked, gesturing to the tiny beads in my hand. I couldn't speak. I just pointed at the mannequin, my hand trembling slightly. What's this?" I asked, my voice sounding weak and distant to my own ears. She beamed, her face lighting up with genuine, unadulterated pride. "Oh, that isn't it just the sweetest thing? It's for your sister, Leah." The air left my lungs in a silent whoosh. The entire room went quiet, the background noise of the city outside fading into a dull hum. I must have looked as horrified as I felt because her smile faltered for a second. She continued trying to fill the sudden, awkward silence. "She came in about 3 weeks ago. She brought photocopies of your sketches, and everything she said, she was so inspired by your vision that she wanted a version for herself to sort of match your energy on the day, to show solidarity. I thought it was the most touching tribute from a sibling I'd ever seen. You two must be incredibly close." Incredibly close. The words echoed in the cavernous space that had just opened up inside my chest. I felt my blood turn to ice water. Every text message, every phone call, every detailed question. It wasn't support. It was espionage. She wasn't my cheerleader. She was a corporate spy stealing trade secrets. The photocopies. She must have taken photos of my sketches and spec sheets that night at my apartment. While I was getting her another glass of wine, my back turned for a mere 60 seconds. That's all it would have taken. The designer was still talking, but her voice was distorted like it was coming from underwater. "We're making a few little changes, of course, so it's her own thing, but the core design is all you." She was so specific. She wanted it to be almost identical, a mirror image. It's really quite poetic, don't you think? Poetic. I felt a bitter, hysterical laugh bubble up in my throat, but I managed to choke it down. I stared at the calico shell of my stolen dream. My sister, my Leah, was going to show up at my commitment ceremony, an event celebrating my unique journey, and my love wearing my heart on her sleeve. Literally. She was going to stand there in a near-identical copy of my gown, a gown I had poured my soul into, and she was going to turn my moment into a bizarre matching sideshow. No, not a sideshow. She was going to try and make it her show. The motive hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't a tribute. This was a hijacking. She wanted to upstage me. She wanted to stand next to me and have every guest whisper who wore it better at my own celebration. She was going to dilute my moment, steal my spotlight, and turn my masterpiece into a competition. The hug she gave me that night flashed in my mind. Her words, "You are going to be the absolute center of the universe," played back, but this time they sounded different. They weren't a promise. They were a challenge. As in, you think you're going to be the center of the universe? Just you watch me. I somehow managed to function. I nodded dumbly at the designer. I mumbled something about the beads being perfect. I paid my deposit. I think I even smiled. It was the most difficult acting job of my life. I walked out of that boutique, got into my car, and sat there for a long time, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I didn't drive. I just sat staring blankly through the windshield as the world spun around me. The first wave was pure, unadulterated grief. It was a physical ache in my chest, the kind of pain that comes from a profound loss. The image I'd held of my sister, the one I'd curated and protected for 29 years, shattered into a million pieces. The confidant, the ally, the one person I thought I could count on for anything, she was a fiction. In her place was a stranger, a jealous, calculating stranger who saw my happiness not as something to celebrate, but as something to conquer. Then came the anger. It was a slow, creeping heat that started in my gut and spread through my veins until my entire body was humming with it. It was a cold, quiet fury. How dare she? How dare she take something so intensely personal, something that was the culmination of my entire identity, and turn it into a cheap prop for her own vanity? This wasn't just about a dress. It was about a fundamental violation of trust. She had looked me in the eye, told me she was proud of me, and then immediately set about plotting how to tear me down. When I finally got home, I collapsed onto my couch, the same couch where she had sat, lying to my face. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through the last month of our texts. Her words, once so comforting, were now dripping with poison. "Can't wait to see the finished product," now read, "as I need to know your production schedule so I can match it." Any challenges with the fabric now read as, "Tell me about your supply chain so I can exploit it." "You're going to look incredible," now read as, "but I'm going to look just like you, and that will be even more incredible." It was all there. The evidence of her premeditated betrayal, hiding in plain sight, disguised as love. And the worst part was I had let her. I had welcomed the viper into my home, shown it my vulnerabilities, and practically drawn it a map to my heart. I cried then. Not loud, sobbing tears, but silent, hot tears of rage and heartbreak. I mourned the sister I thought I had. I mourned the trust that was now gone forever. And I mourned the perfect, beautiful white gown which was now tainted beyond repair. I could never wear it. Even if I called her out and she canceled her order, the design was spoiled for me. Every time I looked at it, I would just see her deception. She had effectively destroyed it without ever laying a finger on the real fabric. I sat there in the dark for hours as the sun went down. The grief slowly subsided. The white-hot anger cooled into something harder, something more focused. A confrontation would be useless. She'd deny it. She'd gaslight me. She'd twist the story and claim I was being sensitive, that she was just trying to honor me. She would make herself the victim and me the cruel, ungrateful brother. She wanted a reaction. She wanted drama. She was probably counting on me to call her screaming, which would give her the perfect opening to play the martyr. And in that moment, sitting alone in the ruins of my trust, a new thought began to form. A cold, clear, and razor-sharp idea. She wanted to play a game. Fine. We would play a game. But she had made a critical error. She had shown me her entire strategy. She thought she was one step ahead, but by revealing her move, she had given me the ultimate advantage. She was expecting a fight. She was expecting tears and accusations. She was not expecting silence. She was not expecting me to let her walk right into the trap she had so carefully built for me. She thought she was stealing my design, but all she had really stolen was a decoy. I picked up my phone. My fingers didn't shake. I didn't scroll to Leah's name. I opened my web browser and began to search for other boutique designers in the city. Designers known for their bold colors. Designers known for working fast. She wanted to wear my original vision fine. Let her have it. Let her show up in that beautiful ghost white gown we had both once admired. Let her stand there waiting for me to arrive in the same outfit, ready for her big moment of shock and awe. She could have the ghost of my happiness. I was about to create something new, something she would never see coming, something forged not in joy and trust, but in betrayal and fire. The first call I made was to a designer whose work I'd admired for years. She was an artist known for theatrical avant-garde pieces that told a story. Her signature was bold, unapologetic color. If my original white gown was a quiet poem about love and hope, I needed her to help me write an epic saga about power and fire. I secured a consultation for the next morning, citing an urgent creative emergency. I didn't sleep that night. I spent the hours sketching, not with the joyful abandon I had before, but with the focused precision of a general planning a campaign. The next day I walked into her studio. I laid it all out. I didn't mention my sister by name. I just said my original, deeply personal design for a major event had been compromised, stolen, and that I had exactly 1 month to create a new centerpiece for the event, something that would not only stand on its own, but would completely eclipse the ghost of the original. I told her I wanted to go in the complete opposite direction. I didn't want white a symbol of beginnings and purity. That felt like a lie now. I wanted red, a deep, impossible red, the color of a fresh wound, but also the color of a heart that is still beating furiously and defiantly. She listened, her eyes sharp and intelligent. When I was done, she simply nodded. She understood. She told me a 1-month turnaround for a custom couture piece was nearly impossible. It would mean pulling her entire team off other projects. The rush fees would be astronomical. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I understand. Do it." And so began the most stressful, secretive, and strangely exhilarating month of my life. The project was codenamed Phoenix. It was a fitting name. I was rising from the ashes of my sister's betrayal. While the designer and her team worked around the clock, my job was to play dumb, and that was the hardest part. Leah, my sister, was relentless. She'd call me, her voice syrupy, sweet, asking for updates. "How's the gown coming along, Santi? I am just so excited to see it." And I would have to force a smile into my voice and lie through my teeth. "It's going great, Leah. We just had the first fitting." I'd invent details about the delicate lace we were using, the hand-sewn pearls on the bodice, all features of the original white design. I was describing her dress back to her, and she was eating it up. Every lie I told felt like swallowing glass, but it was also a small act of rebellion. I was feeding her confidence, letting her believe her plan was working perfectly. She was so sure she had me figured out. She thought she was laying a trap, but I was the one lining the nest with thorns. The cost was immense, not just financially. The secrecy was a heavy cloak to wear. I had to dodge questions from friends, invent excuses for my frequent appointments. I felt like I was living a double life. One life was the happy, oblivious brother preparing for his big day. The other was a man quietly forging his armor for a battle no one else knew was coming. There were moments of doubt late at night where I'd wonder if I was being just as manipulative as she was. But then I'd remember the look in her eyes, the casual way she had plotted to humiliate me at my own celebration, and the cold resolve would harden in my veins once more. This wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. It was about refusing to be a footnote in my own story. The day before the event, I saw the red gown for the final time. It was more magnificent than I could have imagined. It wasn't just a piece of clothing, it was a statement, a declaration. It was crafted from a heavy silk that fell like liquid fire, the color so deep and saturated it seemed to drink the light around it. The cut was sharp, architectural, powerful. It was everything the soft, romantic white gown was not. It was the antithesis. It was my truth. Standing there, looking at my reflection, I didn't see a man who had been betrayed. I saw a man who had refused to be broken. And the day of the commitment ceremony arrived. The venue was breathtaking, filled with music, laughter, and friends and family who had come to celebrate with us. The theme was myth and legend, and our guests had gone all out. The air was electric. I was hidden away in a private room waiting for my cue to enter. My heart was pounding not with nerves, but with a kind of wild, focused energy. Through the slightly ajar door, I saw her. Leah arrived with a flourish, making a grand entrance. And she was wearing it, my white gown, or rather her copy of it. I had to admit she looked beautiful. The dress was an almost perfect replica of my designs, ethereal, delicate, and utterly out of place on a person who was not the guest of honor. She positioned herself near the main walkway, a radiant smile plastered on her face, greeting people as if she were the host. She was a vision in white, the picture of the devoted, proud sister, but I could see the glint in her eyes. She was scanning the crowd, waiting. She was a predator, poised and ready to strike. Her moment was coming. The moment her brother would walk in wearing the exact same thing, turning his unique statement into a silly, matching sibling outfit, with her wearing it first. She would be the original and I the echo. Then the music shifted. The master of ceremonies announced my entrance. This was it. The door opened. For a split second, there was silence. Not a confused silence, but a stunned, breathless one. I stepped out into the main hall. The red of the gown was a shockwave of color in the softly lit room. It was so vibrant, so unexpected, it pulled every single eye in the building directly to me. A collective gasp went through the crowd, followed by a wave of applause and cheers. The gown moved with me, a river of crimson silk, commanding and absolute. It wasn't just an outfit, it was an event. I didn't look for Leah at first. I didn't have to. I could feel her stare burning into my back. I smiled, I waved, I greeted my guests, soaking in their genuine joy and compliments. I owned that moment completely and utterly. It was mine. I had forged it in secret, paid for it with stress and money, and I was going to savor every second. Finally, after making my way through a sea of well-wishers, I allowed myself to turn and look at her. Our eyes met across the room. The triumphant predatory glint was gone. Her face, which had been a carefully constructed mask of sisterly pride, had completely crumbled. I saw it all in flickering succession, first utter shock, then a wave of confusion like a computer trying to process a command that made no sense, then the slow, dawning, horrifying realization. Her jaw was slack. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking as pale as the dress she was wearing. She understood. She understood that I had known all along. She understood that for the past month, every sweet text, every fake update, every lie I had told her was a deliberate move in a game she didn't even know we were playing. She had walked into her own trap. Her grand moment of upstaging me had imploded. She wasn't my twin. She wasn't my rival. She was just a girl at a party wearing a pretty white dress that nobody understood. Her copied gown wasn't a statement. It was a non sequitur, a punchline to a joke that only she and I would ever get. The rest of the night was a blur of happiness. I celebrated my commitment, danced with my friends, and felt for the first time in a month truly light. Leah spent the evening hovering in the corners, a ghost at the feast. People were kind to her, of course, but the whispers followed her. Is that his sister? Why is she wearing a wedding dress? Her attempt to steal my spotlight had only served to make her look foolish and desperate. She had tried to make me a spectacle, and in the end, the spectacle was her. She left early without saying goodbye. We haven't spoken since that night 4 months ago. There were no angry phone calls, no dramatic confrontation. There was just a vast, cold silence. The bridge of trust between us wasn't just burned, it was nuked from orbit. The red gown, my beautiful crimson armor, is now professionally archived, resting in a climate-controlled box. I am its sole owner. It's a symbol, a reminder that I was pushed, that I was betrayed, and that I refused to fall. My sister, at 29 years old, thought she could tear me down by stealing my own creativity. But at 32, I learned that the best defense isn't a loud confrontation. It's a quiet, calculated, and devastatingly elegant victory. She wanted to play a game of shadows and lies. She just never realized she was playing against a master of the light.